everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Today we're going to be talking to Nourished Life about their path to the next normal. In 2020, Nourished Life experienced some great growth. So their CRM manager, Sebastian Kuemmel, will be talking to us today about how they did that and what they learned and can be used in 2021. So our speakers today will be myself, Kristyn Wallace. I'm the Client Success Director for Emarsys ANZ, and we have Sebastian Kuemmel, who is the CRM and Marketing Automation Manager for Nourished Life. Just briefly, a bit about myself. I'm the Client Success Director in ANZ, and I've been with Emarsys for about 3.5 years. I manage our client success team. We have a very strong portfolio of retail and e-commerce clients in ANZ, including the likes of Temple & Webster, Booktopia, Q Clothing, Retail Apparel Group, Lorna Jane, and of course, Nourished Life. So our client success managers take a really hands-on approach to working with our clients, and our focus is on empowering our clients so that they can produce great results for their businesses. So I'm going to let Sebastian introduce himself.
Thank you for having me, first of all. My name is Sebastian Kuemmel. I'm the CRM and Marketing Automation Manager here at Nourished Life. I joined the business in March 2020, so about 12 months ago now. And before that, I spent most of my professional life on the provider or agency side. I used to work for Emarsys, so that's obviously how we know each other. Just a few notes about Nourished Life for everyone who's listening who might not know us as a business. Nourished Life is Australia's leading online shop for natural beauty, health, and home. It started in 2011 and was founded by Irene Falcone, who you see here on this slide and who a lot of people might know from the industry. So she realized in 2011, kind of before the whole clean and natural and organic became really trendy, that she was putting a lot of toxins and nasties on her body on a daily basis. So she started writing a beauty blog and imported actually clean, non-toxic lip balm from the US. That's how it started. And today we stock over 7,000 products across all categories from beauty to health, home, and clothing. Our mission is to help people live a more conscious, sustainable, and healthy life. And Nourished Life also won the Medium Retailer of the Year award at the NRA Awards in 2020.
That's great. So a little bit about Emarsys then, for those of you who are unfamiliar or just looking to learn a little bit more about us as well. We're the only omni-channel customer engagement platform built to accelerate business outcomes. So what that means is we have built-in industry-specific analytics and use cases within our platform, which use channel agnostic personalization and a fully integrated CDP, along with actionable AI to scale one-to-one personalization for optimal results. So I think, Seb, it was the end of 2019 that I first met Nourished Life before you started. You came on board in 2020. I think at that point, we're doing very little in the way of customer lifecycle marketing. So could you give us a snapshot of where Nourished Life started and what needed to be improved when you started working there?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started migrating to Emarsys in late 2019. As I said, I joined the business in March 2020, so that was just after the migration and the heavy part of setup and implementation was done, and deliverability ramp up was done as well. Back then, the business, I think, considered not really, we didn't really have a CRM program or strategy. It was really just sending email, and that was kind of CRM. There was a few challenges, small team, we still are, I have to say, highly efficient, small team, but really just a handful of people working on emails and marketing function as the wider marketing business. We were sending one email a day, and you'll see it here on the slide. This is what our email looked like. You'll see as a very text-heavy editorial, 3 deals, 3 products, and 3 blog posts or podcast episodes that we put in this weekly email. And again, keep in mind, right, we have thousands of products on our website. We have dozens of promotions happening every given day. So we managed to get exactly 3 of them in front of our customers once a week, and they were the same for every customer. So there was no level of segmentation or personalization going on, partly because we didn't have the resources, but also because we just didn't have the technical capabilities to do that. Mm-hmm. Despite us sending very low volumes, our subscriber engagement was actually also kind of low. So open rates, click rates weren't great, partly because of the content I think we sent out, partly I assume would have been deliverability problems. And this loop that you get into of decreasing open rates and then more emails ending up in the spam folder. There were also no actionable insights in terms of analyzing our emails, segmenting data that we had, just really basic, what you kind of expect from a startup.
Yeah. There's a few things I can see in that email that are glaringly obvious problems if you think about an e-commerce email, but we've improved. So I did notice when we first started working with Nourished Life that there was a lack of customer data. So it's kind of a good place to start. So it's nice to see that now we can take that customer data. You had it just wasn't in one place, right?
Yeah,
and use it to personalize your emails and serve relevant products and relevant offers to the right customer at the right time. So it's been based on the personalization that you've implemented and the year that 2020 was, you've experienced a really rapid period of growth, which has kind of forced you to scale, I believe.
Yes, it has, definitely. So from this, and I think on the next slide, we'll see a few of those numbers of where we are today. We've really gone through this process from 0 to having relatively good CRM program, healthy CRM program, with very good results in 6 to 12 months. And this is the numbers we see here. They're taken from the case study that we did together, and it shows our main life cycle goals and how we look at CRM from a customer perspective. So it really starts, if you look at a very simple version of the customer life cycle, it starts with your leads, your subscribers that sign up on the website, that we try to convert to make the first purchase. We then obviously try to get more frequent purchases and higher order value from our active customers and first-time customers. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side, at the end, we try to prevent customers from becoming defecting or inactive, or win them back if they did churn already. So 54% increase in lead conversion rate, 21% decrease in customer churn. I think that's the main 2 ones that really stand out. And then we also increased average order value in units per transaction and first time buyer conversion. And the way really we did this, and we'll I think go through it obviously a bit more in detail, but one is adjusting our email program in terms of batch and blast campaigns and EDMs. And then one key part was obviously marketing automation. And today we're generating about half of our email revenues from each of those channels. So 50% of email revenue from batch and blast, 50% from automation and trigger campaigns, which I think is quite impressive in that short amount of time.
Fantastic. We'll call that goals. I'd like to see every single client seeing those 50% numbers from automation. it's a set and forget revenue stream, which is great. So to achieve all of that in 2020 is a massive result. So I'm sure everyone who's watching would be more interested to know how you did it. And let's get to some secret sharing, if you would.
We shall. I'm going to walk a very thin line here between trying to be helpful and explaining what we did in a short amount of time that we have, and not talking too much about our secret sauce ingredients, but what the 4 things that are important for me when I look at our CRM strategy and develop that. It's the basics, which is tech stack and data, and having the right technology in place and the right data points in place that you need to execute on your strategy. The other thing is acquisition versus retention, which we're going to talk about a bit more in detail, and that also leads to what I call short-termism versus long-term loyalty. And then on top of that, you have a piece of personalization and content that we added to our email campaigns, but also other web ads and any campaigns that we're running as a CRM program.
Great. So I guess moving on to the next slide.
Yes, so if we go right into the first point, which is the tech stack, I think to get the kind of result that we've seen and to execute a good CRM strategy, there are a few things that are indispensable, like I said. So one of them is having the technical solutions that allow you to execute on a strategy. And that's something we look at on a very regular basis to see if our tech stack is fit for purpose, and it does what it needs to do. It's one thing, I think, to come up with great ideas and campaigns that you want to run. It's another thing to actually have the tools in place to do that without your computer crashing because you have Excel open and you're running 100 pivot tables, or you have to have an army of data scientists that run those queries for you. I think a question for me that I'm still a bit undecided on is if we should have more point solutions and a strong data platform in the background, and then have different point solutions around it to execute across channels, or to have a more comprehensive marketing platform that kind of does everything in one place, which makes it a lot easier, but then potentially doesn't do everything just quite as well as point solutions that are built around specific use cases or channels. So we're currently using a few different solutions as part of our tech stack. The Nourished Life business, obviously, at the heart, kind of Emarsys is at the heart of what we do. But yeah, I don't think that the jury's out yet on kind of which approach to take, and it really depends on, I think, what type of business you are, where you are on your journey, and what your personal preferences is of, if you have a very technical team, one solution might be better than another one.
Size of the business is also massive. Smaller business might need 2 bits of technology to start with, and an enterprise level size business will have so many more pieces of technology.
There's a lot of things that influence that, I think, and there's no wrong way, I don't think, but what you want to make sure is that all the data you're using behind it sits in one place, and you can use that data and dig into that data to execute different campaigns across channels, and for them then to be consistent in terms of messaging. So you'll be happy to see I've added a screenshot here of what this looks like for us in Emarsys. That's a screenshot of what my contact profile looks like in our database, and it has all these things about me in terms of how many emails I open, how much do I purchase, what is my lifetime value, what is my predicted lifetime value, which I think is quite important to make smart decisions about targeting. Again, that could look very different in different types of platforms, right? But again, what you want to make sure is that you have all of the data in one place to collect that data. I want to highlight really that should be as much as possible first-party data, and then you can analyze and execute that. And I think that's a very important part, because we've all become, I think, quite obsessed with collecting more and more data of people everywhere on the website. But then a lot of businesses have problems actually using those because it's disjointed, or they can't tie it back to one customer, and you can't really exactly.
Yeah, and then I think one of the reasons I'm very happy to work with clients who use our product is because all of the data that we're giving you is actionable. These are actionable insights. It's first-party data based on all of Emarsys tech. So what you see in this profile is all Nourished Life sort of first-party customer data. Not getting it from anywhere else but our tech. So it's really, really valuable if you can action it, which is the whole point.
True, very true. But surprisingly, it seems quite basic, right? But surprisingly, and from my kind of experience of working with businesses, you either have one extreme, you have businesses that don't have, the kind of technology that they need at all, and they just have one solution, one very basic solution potentially, or one or two, and just not collecting enough data. And then you have, on the other extreme, businesses who have an abundance of technical solutions that hardly overlap, and they spend, eye-watering amounts on technology, implementing that, but don't use it at all because, again, they just don't have them integrated in a way that you can actually make use of that data. So it's often that you see either one of those extremes, and I think it's important to kind of meet somewhere in the middle. The last thing, just before I forget, before we jump onto the next slide, is data privacy. Quickly, mentioned how everyone is collecting more and more data 24/7 about everyone, with the shift we've seen since GDPR coming into effect. Actually, I had to look it up. It was 3 years ago now that it started in Europe, which is kind of mind-blowing.
So for those of us in Australia who might not know what GDPR is, I'm sure all the marketers on this call know what GDPR is because we all have to comply with it. If you have a European citizen in your database, you're impacted by GDPR, which is the set of laws protecting the privacy of European citizens and influencing our data protection policies and governance globally.
It was the first global, I think, legislation that really reviewed those data privacy rights of consumers, and therefore brought a really big shift in how consumers think about their right to privacy of their own data and who owns their data. And yeah, I think that'll be key for this year and the next couple of years in CRM, is this shift in the consumer's mind of how important their data is to them and what businesses can do with it.
What value are you, if it's an exchange, right? If I'm giving you consent to take my data, I need to get some value out of it. So
absolutely, and the Australian government is currently reviewing, the Privacy Act.
Yeah.
So it won't be long until kind of the same legislation will apply to businesses here in Australia, not surprisingly.
So yeah, I think look, the insights we're seeing in this unified customer profile, like we said, can be acted upon with tactics and giving someone your data. If I'm giving you something, I'm expecting you to come back to me with a personalized experience. Like, I don't want you to send me, an email with products that aren't relevant to me if I have agreed to share my data with you. So using insights like this that we can see in the Emarsys platform, in the unique profile and other areas in Emarsys, are helping to create a customer base that is loyal, which hopefully feeds into your piece about acquisition and retention.
Yeah,
how to retain.
Definitely. So, you always hear those numbers about it's this times more expensive to acquire a new customer versus retaining an existing one. Great numbers to just quote without much context.
Oh yeah.
Because they're really catchy, but.
Can I say the numbers? I love a stat.
You can have the numbers.
Okay, I love them. So they go something like this. Acquiring a new customer can cost 5 times more than retaining an existing customer. You hear it at every marketing conference. They're true, but it's something we hear all the time. And a lot of businesses don't really understand the cost per acquisition per customer. But we do know that retention, increasing customer retention by 5 or 10% can have huge results on revenue for your business. So acquiring customers is very expensive, so you want to make sure that that investment is going to good use, so that you're getting a second, a third, a fourth purchase from your customer.
I think you made a good point in kind of detailing what kind of acquisition you're talking about and understanding where those leads come from, because often you hear those numbers and there's no context given about what the balance should be between acquisition and retention, what types of acquisition people are talking about, or to actually retain more customers, because that's also, it's not easy. It might be cheaper, but it's not easy to do either. The other thing that happened in 2020 is, like a lot of things that happened over the last year, didn't necessarily make sense if we look at it through the traditional lens of what we thought we knew. And we had to, in some ways, rethink how consumers behave and therefore how we treat them differently, and what those rules about acquisition and retention actually mean, and how we should interpret them.
What do you mean by that?
So what happened in 2020, and we were really lucky as a pure play online business selling the products that we're selling, like a lot of other businesses. Unfortunately, some haven't been as lucky, but I have to say we have been. What happened is that in March, April, we had a huge influx of new leads and first-time buyers coming to our website and into our database. So that definitely highlighted kind of the fact that acquisition is great if you want to see results very quickly and boost vanity metrics like numbers of customers or email subscribers, email subscriber list. But then we quickly noticed that that came with its own challenges, especially since a lot of those orders and a lot of those customers didn't go through these traditional stages of I'm doing my research, I show interest, I get familiar with the brand, and then I end up at the purchase decision. A lot of those were just panic buys, people buying hand sanitizer because they panicked. So I think that's kind of special about what happened last year with our leads, why this is usually a great thing if your database increases. That was true, but we really had to rethink what we do with them. And we still wanted to make sure that as many of those customers as possible come back and we retain them. So we had to go back to square one and really rethink the way we target them or retarget them, we educate them as they go through our onboarding journey. And what pieces of our lifecycle strategy we're missing.
So key things that you learned then over that 2020 chaotic period.
Yeah, it really was. I think lots of learning in a very short amount of time. One of the first things is going back to these popular numbers of it's X times more expensive to acquire new customers than to retain existing ones. That might be true for some cases, but the important thing here is to understand, as you said, where did those leads come from? What was their intent? What have they browsed or purchased on the site? How much time did they spend? What was their experience like? And if you know where that lead came from and their intent, and in best case, their pretty good lifetime value, we saw that on the first slide of how much we think the first-time customer might be spending in the future. Then you can start to focus on kind of the right types of acquisition that might not be as as expensive and that are more profitable than others. And then that makes the retention part a lot easier because you have quality leads. So I think it's very much, interconnected. It's not as black and white, one thing and the other thing.
So using that first party data, let's say, like understanding who your good customers are, understanding who's making a repeat purchase, and then using that good quality data that you have in Emarsys to create something like a lookalike audience and sync that into your networks where you are acquiring those leads is invaluable.
So
having that understanding.
Absolutely. And the other part to that is innovation and agility. I think, again, if last year has taught us something, it's that you have to move quick. And I think a lot of businesses did that in ramping up their digital and CRM strategy in particular. It just shows the time it took us to bring a new product like the hand sanitizer to market. It's just crazy if you think about how long it usually takes. It was a few weeks, I think.
Yeah.
So kudos to all the teams and all the businesses that did that over the last 12 months. In terms of CRM, as I said, we looked at all of our journeys and very quickly noticed that we have to add a lot of things. Keep in mind, we just started with our new platform, so we had to add a lot of journeys. We had to rethink some of the existing ones that we had, and really fine-tune things that just weren't ideal for all of these new leads and customers that we have. One was the onboarding journey, which was just one email, and I think for a lot of businesses that's still the same. Just one "thank you for subscribing" email, and then it stops there. We've now set up a whole series of journeys that focus on education, introducing our brand to someone who signs up, and then also potentially using incentives to get that first purchase. But that has to be, again, an incentive that you use kind of in a smart way to at certain stages of the life cycle where it makes sense.
Agreed.
Again, coming back to those hand sanitizer customers, retargeting and educating them was especially important. And channels, I think, that are typically seen as acquisition channels, like search or social, came into play for us there for, quotes, existing customers, because you basically had to reacquire them. So I also think, I'd also challenge that idea that some channels are specifically should be used for acquisition and some for retention. I think you really have to look at the customer and see what channels they are using, and be innovative in terms of, trying, for example, search to win back customers or educate them, using your segments that you have to send emails, also to execute campaigns on social. SMS has been, I think, a big runner-up in terms of popularity over the last couple of...
growing in popularity in Australia massively.
Absolutely.
Tactical, you can't annoy people with SMS, but it's very, very effective. I've seen clients who didn't send SMS, didn't change anything about a promotion year on year, send an SMS in addition to what they did last year, and double their revenue, and almost bring down their website with the amount of traffic that came from the SMS. So if you are planning on sending a big SMS, probably do it in chunks throughout the day so you don't bring down your website. It's definitely a good
who would have thought? After SMS was already dead. It's definitely a good tool. You just have to be mindful of when you send it, who you send it to, what the message is, and how you segment them. It can be very, I think, intrusive, but it can be very effective as well. Which I think leads us perfectly into our next topic, which is, I call it, again, it's a hard word to say too, short-termism versus long-term strategy, loyalty.
Right. So when we talk about short-termism versus long-term loyalty, obviously we want to look towards long-term loyalty over short-termism, and I'm sure everyone is wondering how you're influencing that long-term loyalty and moving away from the kind of buy now discount strategy, even though a discount at times is very useful.
Yeah, agreed. I think everyone on the call today who knows us as a business, I have to admit that as a business, we're still quite focused on promotions and discounting. And that's, if you look at our competitive landscape, that's pretty much the same across different competitors. But and I think that's in some way okay as long as you keep your profit margin in check, which again you have to be able to measure also on a contact level, because you have contacts customers who are have more affinity to discounts and some who don't. So you have to be smart about it, how you use them, and how high that incentive should be.
It could be as simple as, understanding a high spender, someone who spends a lot, their average order value is high, and then giving them the discount only if they purchase a certain amount, versus someone else who might be a low spender who might not want to give a discount to at all.
Definitely. And so that's what we've done. We've become, I think, a lot smarter in terms of what that looks like. We're still focusing, as any other business, on revenue from a specific campaign and revenue per day and per week and per month. We have our revenue targets, and I think just looking at historically how platforms work, GA and email platforms, they attribute revenue to a specific campaign, right? So that's very much still front and center in kind of the marketer's mind, and that's why there's, I think, a lot of focus on that. What I think, and I might be a bit biased here, what you've done really well is shifting that perception and making it much easier to look at, rather than individual campaigns, at a customer's lifetime value, how much they spend over time while they're customers with us, and make that clear and use that information to target them specifically and focus on customer lifetime value.
You can still send your individual campaign, but you can treat the customer like who they are within that campaign. So you're a high spender, you see something different within that campaign than I see, because I've only purchased once. So it seems so simple.
It does. It's not that simple often in actually applying it, but that's really it, and that's what we've done on top of our usual promotion strategy, is applying the additional layer of looking at customer lifetime value, measuring that, and adjusting our communication and especially automations based on that. We're also putting much more focus on reaching out to our customers and asking them questions about what they want to hear about, how happy they are with the brand, how often they want to receive communication. So you'll see a screenshot here of our preference center, where we offer the option for people to just receive the weekly email instead of the daily ones, which might sound a bit counterintuitive, but it really helps us for people who don't like to receive a daily email, and a lot of them do, myself not included. I like to, in best case, reduce the volume of emails, but we do have a lot that do. So, and for others, we send them less emails, or we offer the option for them to pause emails altogether for a while before they actually unsubscribe, which again has a very positive impact on that customer and how long they stay with us before they get upset and unsubscribing from all of our emails. Preference center, I think, definitely something that's very underrated and such a simple step to set up, to just ask your customers what they want to hear about.
I think preference centers can be contentious, but the way you talk about a preference center is a good way to use a preference center. So, instead of making it about what I'm going to tell you that I'm going to click on the website, which I'm not actually going to click on, it's about how often I want to hear from you, and my communication cadence preferences, which is a much more effective way to use a preference center in a lot of cases.
Yeah. The last piece there, I think, is a good loyalty and rewards program. That is obviously key if you look at, if you want to achieve long-term loyalty. And it helps a lot to get smarter again about how you use your incentives and how you keep your customers for longer. So we have what we call the Nourished Life Club, which is our points-based tiered customer reward system. It's not groundbreaking in the way it works. You can collect points, and there's an element of gamification. You can move up across various levels of your club status and then unlock benefits. But for me as a CRM manager and for every, I think, CRM team out there, that is really gold, because you have so much data about your customers that you can use. And it opens up so many possibilities in terms of collecting data in a way that doesn't seem creepy, understanding your customers, and then automating journeys based on that. I think that's key. There's so many possibilities of automation when you have a good loyalty program.
Yeah, and it's becoming more prominent. The thought by marketers that a loyalty program will be effective and useful is becoming a topic of conversation. A lot of our meetings. Emarsys does have a loyalty solution.
Yeah.
You don't use it, but it's inbuilt into the platform. We calculate the points. We do all of that so that the loyalty status goes against a customer in that one single source of truth, and then you can stop relying on discounts so much, and you have a more authentic way of trying to retain your customers, and one that sort of sacrifices a lot less margin, because in often cases what you're doing is incentivizing another purchase with points or rewards of some kind without sacrificing your margin until they get to a level where you say, okay, you've done this, this, and this now, aligned with whatever my marketing goals are, and now we give you a reward. So
it's a great opportunity, and I think they're so easy to set up these days. Unfortunately, what I think you see a lot is businesses who have kind of, again, a standalone loyalty solution that they plug in on the website that sits completely separately from your CRM platform or your CDP platform, and they don't talk to each other. So then you create issues where communication, again, is very disjointed. You get one email from the loyalty platform that you've gained points, you get the order confirmation email, you might get on the same day a newsletter from another platform, and suddenly you get 2-3 emails a day. They look different. You think as a consumer you unsubscribe from one, but you actually don't. You still get all of the other ones, which is very confusing. And I think that's where a lot of loyalty programs go wrong, and it goes back to having the data in one place. If you use different platforms, even, which is fine, but make sure they talk to each other and it's consistent.
You as a marketer need to understand the impact of your loyalty program on your customer, and to do that you need a 360 view of your customer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I think the next thing we would want to talk about is personalization and content, and what you're actually doing within your emails and your segmentation to achieve what you're achieving. So I guess in the last year, your approach has massively changed from 2019 Nourished Life to 2021 Nourished Life. So do you want to take us through what changes you've made?
Yeah, so you're right. It has been, the lights went out.
Okay.
Shall we just start with this?
We'll start again. Yep.
Personalization content.
So I guess the last component, Seb, is really around personalization and content, and how your approach to personalization and content has changed from 2019, when I first met Nourished Life, to 2021, where we are today.
Yeah, it's been wild year, obviously, and I think we've gone through this transformation in such a short amount of time, which has been really exciting and interesting. It's been a lot of work, obviously. So if you remember this email that we had on the first slide, where we managed to get 3 offers and 3 products in front of every customer every week, that has completely changed when we look at our batch and blast communication. So not just from a creative perspective, and I think that's where we still have some work to do, but mainly from a content and segmentation point of view. So in addition to asking people what type of content they want to receive, we also have capabilities now to segment for people what kind of content we think they want to receive, based on everything we know about that customer, be it demographic data, geolocation, behavioral purchase data. And that really helps us to be able to get the right content, be it products or content articles or blog posts or promotions in front of the right people. And the possibilities here are really endless. And my hope is that algorithms and AI coming into play will still make that a lot easier moving forward to do that, because it still involves a bit of manual work to set up our segments and launch emails. If you look at, I think, product recommendations, again, that you plug into the email and everyone just sees what the machine thinks, that person is likely to buy next, where you really get to one-to-one product personalization in emails. That's great. I hope that, we will also be able to do that with others. So offers, content, blog posts, podcasts. So
Emarsys is actually working on some great things. Some things are available now, and with AI, and some things are coming. But the ability to understand channel preference is something that we have in our AI segmentation tool, and propensity to do something. So propensity to convert, propensity to churn. We have all that information as well in our AI segmentation tool. So even 3 or 4 years ago, I guess, from your days at Emarsys until now, our AI product has really evolved and become really smart in the way we can engage people in different channels.
It's moving so quickly, and it will be, I think, over the next couple of years. I think that will be one focus: content personalization, bridging the content gap. We don't have a problem with content in itself or the lack of content. So we have our podcast it's called Talking Clean with Irene. We have very extensive library of blog posts on our website. The question is just how do we get, again, the right things in front of the right people? Now, if you know what blog posts someone's reading, what podcast episode they've looked at or listened to, why not show them more content around that? If you can see what customers are searching on your search bar on top of the website, how much time they spend, what filters they use when they filter for products or brands. All these things are things that we now consider, that we track on the website. We feed it into that unified profile, and then we use it to create segments and send emails or display content in emails to certain people, or not display content. I think that's often overlooked, is how do we not display the wrong content to people rather than providing as much content as possible. Sometimes, less is more, I think. And the other one is really within the email that we're sending, having certain blocks that go out to certain people. So rather than just the whole campaign to individual segments, we also then turn on or off content within the emails. I think really the times where you have one segment that you send all your emails to are really over. So most of you're not right. So I think for most of our emails, we have a dedicated segment that we're sending to, that where the criteria behind who we're sending to is completely different based on all the data we have.
I mean, you can send to your big segment, but within the email, if you're including me in your engaged segment with no other criteria, within the email, I would like you to not show me skincare products if I haven't looked at skincare products. So,
or show women's products for men, which surprisingly I am still receiving a lot of.
It happens. We're real consumers. So I think that's all been really insightful. Thank you, Seb. I would like you to just run us through again the key takeaways and the results, because I think there's been so much good information that you've shared. So thank you again for that. But I like numbers, so if you could just run us through the numbers again.
Thank you. I feel like we there's hours of more content, in those points that we talked about that we could talk about more. I think that was a really quick run through, but for me, one of the key takeaways is those numbers here that focus on the customer lifecycle and how, again, just to simplify it, convert customers at the beginning of the lifecycle, keep them, retain them as long as possible, and win them back when they become inactive and defecting. And being smart about the incentives you're using while you do that, to protect your margin and target them with the right content at the right time. It's the key thing of why I think our program is successful. And when we look at automation, there's a chart here where you see the automated send volume of our emails. So that's the percentage of emails that we send that are triggered or automated. and the revenue that they're generating as a percentage of our total revenue. So for everyone, who's a bit anxious about setting up programs and automation and the work that you have to do once to set that up, it's, you have to put a bit of thinking into when you first build them, but the volume isn't actually that big. So you see we had a really small increase in volumes that are triggered and automated, but massive impact on the revenue those are generating. So as I said, about 50+% of our email revenues come from automation.
Yeah.
That's a very reliable stream of income that we have. If we don't have the resources to send and batch and blast email one day, it's something that we can rely on. Obviously, you have to always optimize it and make it better, but it's a good place to start somewhere and, just set up some automation programs, like onboarding, birthday program, very often, overlooked, first time buyer conversion, and then build on from there. It can be a bit daunting as an exercise to look at all of the life cycle, but I think take baby steps is one of my key takeaways.
And I think for the marketers who are watching this, who have tons of BAU and revenue targets to hit every month, let this be a prompt for you to start testing things, because if you can build out a business case by just showing this sort of gap, right? Start 1 or 2 automations and put it in a graph and show C-level what the impact is from 1 or 2 automations. Hopefully you get some resource to build lots more, and then you get 50% of your revenue coming through that way. And what CEO or CFO, I guess, doesn't want to see that.
Definitely helps to shift, I think, that thinking away from batch and blast revenue from campaigns and individual offers that have to drive revenue. I think that's become a lot easier to convince people over the last months again, but it's still an issue with teams being small, everyone working very hard to kind of set up their regular newsletter communication, but that's definitely important.
Worthwhile. So we move on to the next slide. We just have your key takeaways from 2020.
So I would say, 1, data. You have to start with the data. Very powerful, but you have to make sure that you can access it. So I would say, if you have a choice between collecting just all of the data or being strategic when it comes to what data points you're collecting, be smart about it and focus on quality over quantity. Collect first-party data with all the changes, ITP coming into play, phasing out of third-party cookies. You want to make sure you're collecting first-party data and you can actually have that somewhere where you can use it. The other thing, automation is essential. We've just seen in that chart that we looked at, essential for growth and any good CRM strategy. Getting that balance right between acquisition and retention, definitely key. And again, retention isn't always that easy, but it helps when you have a good marketing technology stack and you focus on the right sources of acquisition. And the last one, and that's something we have a lot of focus on this year and did over the last year, is putting data privacy and the consumer concerns, I guess, about data and collecting data, taking that serious and putting privacy front and center when we communicate and when we actually work with data. And if we share data or not share data with others, which we don't, like we own first-party data. We don't just collect senseless amounts, I hope.
I'm sure you don't. There's no point in collecting senseless amounts of data. You got to know what you're going to do with it. Otherwise, you just have numbers and letters. So I think we have a few questions. If you've got a couple minutes to address those. So first one would be, which automations have been most valuable for you?
good question. I think we talked about a few of the basics that everyone should have, which is onboarding. First-time buyer conversion, I think, is often overlooked. It starts onboarding, you get the first purchase, and then it suddenly stops there and then goes into win-back. So getting a second purchase and a third purchase, I think once you get past that hurdle, again, there's some really interesting numbers about the chances that, everyone, the chances a customer is likely to stay with you after their second and their third purchase, and it increases dramatically after that. So focusing on getting that second purchase, I think, is really important. And a few trigger ones that are based around behavior and purchase patterns and understanding the massive amount of products we have, I think would be around replenishment. How often do people purchase and repurchase the same product, and giving them, a clue or kind of a friendly reminder when it is time to repurchase the product.
Hugely appreciated by people and not annoying at all. People, the customers that we have who send replenishment emails, some of them get like email responses thanking them for the reminder. So that is a very useful automation to send.
I think so. It's not an easy one to set up, I think, because you need to be smart about it. You need to calculate repurchase timeframes, but if you can do it, that's one of the key ones, I think, if you have replenishable products.
That's another thing that our AI solution actually does for you.
Yeah, you have to have a good solution in place to do that. Also, things like price drop campaigns, notifying customers about when products get cheaper. And again, we have 7,000 products. We can't go in manually and say, this product just got cheaper, build a campaign, build a segment, send that out. That has to be automated. But they're very successful because we have, our platform knows what products every day and what price they have and when they become cheaper. It also knows how many customers have browsed that product in the last 30 days and have not purchased it. So bringing that together, being automatically able to trigger an email, that's highly effective.
It's another really popular one with our clients. Since we brought out that pre-built tactic in the last year for price drop, the uptake obviously has been massive, because if I'm browsing your website, I'm looking at a product for over X amount of time, I don't buy it, and you send me an email saying that product's gone on sale, chances are I'm going to go back and look at the product and potentially buy it. So you're at least going to get me back on the website where I'm captive, and chances are I'll buy that product or something else. So it's a good one. Second question here, and I think probably we've only got time for this one. So how have you retained the customers that you gained during COVID? So our hand sanitizer friends.
Yeah, hand sanitizer friends and toilet paper friends.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think we had to also get used to the fact that we can't retain all of them. I think that's an important piece to it, is if you do understand that you have this massive amount, and where they come from, why they've purchased, you also understand that, again, some of them were just panic buys, and there's just no point in targeting and retargeting them and using incentives to do that. So not all of them we've retained, but I think we've done a good job in doing the best we can by looking at those customers again and reintroducing them to our brand. And there were quite a few, who then we managed to actually educate about clean beauty, all of the other categories that we have outside of hand wash and hand sanitizer, which is very broad, telling them our brand story, and kind of reacquiring them, I guess I would say, not even converting them, because we have to completely learn about us as a brand.
Yeah.
So still a bit, fair bit of drop off, which is okay. But we've done a good job with automation of targeting them.
And a good opportunity, you know who those people are. You can segment them, you can isolate them. So you can actually talk to them in a different way and send them down an education path that your other customers don't necessarily need to go down.
Yeah.
I'm interested and very excited to see what you do in 2021. And if anyone does have any questions for Seb or us about how we do all of this, you can email our marketing manager, Lauren. Her email address is just on the screen here, and she'll pass your questions on to Seb or one of us here, and we'll get back to you. So thank you everyone for attending. Thank you for Seb.
Thank you.
For being here. Very insightful. I think one of my most enjoyable webinars in a while. So thank you.
Thanks.
And we'll see you all next time.
Bye.